Imagine standing before a judge, desperate for fairness, but instead being met with cold dismissal simply because of the color of your skin. That's exactly what happened to a bright young black teen whose heartfelt plea was silenced by a judge with an unjust agenda. The courtroom, meant to symbolize justice, became a stage for prejudice. With dreams on the line, the teen's voice seemed to fall on deaf ears, until something extraordinary happened. Just when hope seemed lost, an unexpected twist changed everything, leaving the entire courtroom in shock. What started as an act of injustice unraveled into a story no one saw coming. Stay tuned as we dive into this powerful tale of courage, resilience, and the ultimate fight for what's right. You won't believe how this story ends. The story begins with Jamal, a 17-year-old honor student with big dreams of becoming an engineer. Known for his hard work and kind heart, Jamal was loved by his community. But when he found himself in a legal battle over a misunderstanding, everything changed. A minor incident spiraled into something much bigger, and soon Jamal was standing in court, hoping for understanding. As he presented his case, it was clear he had prepared carefully, laying out the facts with honesty and confidence. But the judge, stern and dismissive, hardly looked at him. Instead, she interrupted, her tone sharp and dismissive, as if Jamal's words didn't matter. The room felt heavy with silence as people exchanged uneasy glances. Jamal's heart sank. He had done everything right, but prejudice hung thick in the air. Little did anyone know, the wheels of justice were already turning in ways no one could have predicted. As Jamal stood silently, trying to keep his composure, the judge's decision seemed inevitable. Her words carried an edge, not just of authority but of bias, as though she had already decided his fate before he even walked into the courtroom. Jamal's mother, seated in the back row, clenched her hands tightly, silently praying for a miracle. She knew her son didn't deserve this, but how could she fight a system that felt so determined to silence him? Meanwhile, whispers rippled through the room. Some spectators, familiar with the judge's reputation, shook their heads in quiet frustration. Others were too stunned to speak. The tension was palpable as the prosecutor pressed on, painting a picture of Jamal that felt far removed from the truth. But something unexpected was happening outside the courtroom. Someone was watching, someone who believed in justice and had the power to turn the tide. The question was, would they step forward in time? As the judge leaned forward, ready to deliver her verdict, the weight of the moment pressed down on everyone in the room. Jamal's voice had been silenced, his character dismissed, and his future now teetered on the edge. His mother's eyes filled with tears, her heart breaking as she saw the system's unfairness closing in on her son. Jamal himself stared straight ahead, refusing to let his fear show, though inside, he felt as if the ground beneath him was crumbling. But just before the gavel could fall, the courtroom doors swung open. Heads turned as a man entered, his presence commanding immediate attention. He wasn't part of the legal team or even someone familiar, but his face carried determination. In his hands were documents, evidence that had never been presented, truths that had never been heard. The room buzzed with whispers, the tension now unbearable. Could this be the moment that changed everything? The man who entered the courtroom wasn't just any bystander. His name was Marcus, a respected community advocate who had been quietly following Jamal's case from the shadows. As he approached the bench, the room fell silent, all eyes fixed on him. "Your Honor," Marcus began, his voice steady but firm, "there's been a serious oversight here. I have evidence that proves Jamal's innocence beyond a doubt." The judge frowned, visibly annoyed at the interruption, but Marcus stood his ground. He handed over a folder filled with surveillance footage, witness statements, and overlooked details that painted an entirely different picture of the events. Gasps echoed through the courtroom as the evidence made its way to the judge's desk. Jamal's mother gripped her seat tightly, her heart pounding with cautious hope. But just when it seemed like the truth might finally come to light, the prosecutor sprang up, challenging Marcus's credibility and questioning the legitimacy of the evidence. The room erupted in chaos as tension soared. Could this new twist expose the truth, or was the system too entrenched in its bias to listen? The clock was ticking, and Jamal's fate hung in the balance. As the prosecutor tried to discredit Marcus, the judge hesitated, visibly torn between maintaining control of her courtroom and considering the overwhelming evidence that was now laid out before her. The room fell into a tense silence. For a moment, it seemed as if the system's weight would crush Jamal once again. But then, something incredible happened. The judge, cold and authoritative just moments before, paused and looked at the documents in her hands. She slowly scanned through the footage, each piece revealing the truth Jamal had been fighting for all along. It was clear he had been wronged. In that instant, the prosecutor's objections fell flat. The judge stood, her voice booming with authority. "This case is hereby dismissed," she declared, the words carrying the weight of justice that had been denied for too long. Jamal's mother gasped, tears flooding her eyes as the realization hit. Her son was free. But just as Jamal and his mother exchanged a relieved look, a voice cut through the air, one they had never expected. From the back of the courtroom, the same prosecutor who had fought so hard to convict Jamal stood and, in a chilling tone, said, "You may have won today, but there are forces much bigger than this courtroom who won't let this go." The tension surged again, and Jamal's heart raced. What did this mean? Was this just the beginning of something even more dangerous? As the doors closed behind them, the weight of their victory was suddenly clouded by an unsettling uncertainty. Justice had been served, but the battle was far from over. As Jamal and his mother left the courtroom, the weight of the prosecutor's final words hung in the air. But in that moment, Jamal realized something important. The fight for justice didn't end with a single victory. It was a long, ongoing battle. What mattered was that they had stood up, faced the injustice, and refused to back down. Outside, the community rallied behind them, their voices rising in solidarity. News of Jamal's triumph spread quickly, inspiring others who felt silenced by the system to stand up and speak out. In the end, the true victory wasn't just in the courtroom. It was in the hope reignited in people everywhere. Jamal's story was a reminder that no matter how hard the struggle, courage and truth have the power to change everything. But as the future unfolded, one thing was clear: Jamal would never stop fighting for what was right, and neither would his community.